It may not actually be true, but it always seems like the first discussion filmmakers have when planning a sequel to a popular movie is how they can ruin the rules of the original. How many times have you excitedly been to see a follow-up to a surefire classic, only for its central rule to be completely dumped on? If your answer wasn't 10, well, you're gonna love this list, which celebrates those sequel filmmakers who looked at the work that defined their predecessor and just went, nah. It doesn't always ruin the film, but it definitely dilutes the intelligence of the franchise at the very least. So get ready for the second coming, as I'm Too Ash, Too Furious from What Culture, and these are 10 sequels that ignore defining rules from the original. 10. Iron Man 3. In the original Iron Man, Tony Stark needs the arc reactor to keep the shrapnel from killing him. The Playboy genius was the key to the film's success, as we got to watch a story more interested in the man behind the super alter ego than the suit he put on or the powers that he boasted. Aside from his extravagant ways though, what made Stark so interesting was his unique constant plague. The pull of the arc reactor that powered his suit was the only thing between a piece of shrapnel and his heart. But then, in the third Iron Man, we found out that it could have been removed the whole time. After destroying all of his super suit, Stark gets the little piece of metal that has been plaguing his life since the MCU kicked off, just taken out of his chest. So not only was one of the more visually striking elements of the character nullified, but the entire subplot of Iron Man 2 with Tony suffering from poisoning was rendered pointless. Why? 9. Back to the Future 2. In Back to the Future, it is very firmly established that if you change the past, you'll cause huge ripples in the future. That's pretty much the entire plot of the movie, as something as simple as making your father stand up to his bully will change literally everything. But then the sequel throws that out of the window by forgetting the franchise's own rules. In the original 2015 future timeline, Marty McFly buys a sports almanac to make himself rich with a little informed gambling. Naturally, Doc Brown kicks off and takes it from him, but old man Biff witnesses everything, steals it and the DeLorean, and takes the almanac back to 1955 to give it to himself. He then returns to the exact same time so nobody notices. That makes no sense though, because according to the rules of the first movie, when Biff goes back in time, he changes the timeline completely, so the future he's going back in should no longer exist for him to return to. He should have only been able to return to the dystopian future created when young Biff goes full Donald Trump, if any at all, since technically he should actually be wiping himself out of existence altogether. 8. Escape from the Planet of the Apes. For a sci-fi made in the 60s, the Planet of the Apes has surprisingly accurate science in its suggestion that time travel by relativity is in fact possible. And that is pretty much where the realism ends, but it's right in suggesting that there's no way back into the past. The sequels, starting with Beneath the Planet of the Apes, were clearly less keen on that theory, so ignored it completely. Beneath introduced nuclear bomb-worshipping mutants in an eternal war with the apes. With the apes' accidental help, the bomb is set off and all life on Earth is extinguished, but far from being the end of a franchise, we got a follow-on prequel that had a trio of chimpanzees escape in one of the man-made spaceships. Escape from the Planet of the Apes is a fun film that, with its light-hearted jab at celebrity, made everyone forget that escaping in that manner was flat out impossible, both in existing movie world and reality. 7. Aliens. Before it was diluted by human crossbreeding and predator enslavement, the xenomorph was the most ferocious of movie monsters. What makes them so formidable is their invulnerability. Try to cut them and their acid blood, capable of burning through multiple layers of thick metal, pours out and literally burns people in half. But then in the first sequel, it is quite literally diluted, as the xenomorphs in Aliens are less immediately devastating. Obviously stylistically necessary to make the action twist on the universe work, the blood James Cameron presented was a lot less dangerous. Yes, it injures Hicks, but not to the same bone-melting, eyeball-popping, skin-scouring extent you'd have expected it to in the original. 6. Wall Street. Money Never Sleeps. Wall Street is a film so quintessentially 80s it blurs the line between influencing and pastiching the decade. Telling the story of Bud Fox, played by then up-and-coming Charlie Sheen, we see him initially idolise Gordon Gekko before coming to the attention of the police after high-level insider trading. Throwing in Gekko in the process, it's assumed Bud has learnt the lesson his father was telling him the whole time about greed being bad. Except, according to the sequel, he hadn't. In the Revenge Story sequel, it's established that Fox wasn't instrumental in sending Gecko to jail, and thanks to a cameo, we get to see how Bud has turned out. Gecko bumps into Sheen's former lead and they reminisce as old friends. Bud went to jail but then used Blue Star to make him millions and move into philanthropy, so he clearly still thought that greed was good. 5. Terminator 2 – Judgment Day. In Terminator, although Skynet wants to change the past, its robotic mind stops it from realizing that isn't possible because time is a loop that cannot be changed. Judgment Day throws that out and says you can, in fact, change it for no reason other than it's more interesting, apparently. In a ridiculous turn of events, things got even more confusing in the third film, where it was revealed that there were predetermined points in time that couldn't be altered, but other things could still be messed around with. Another major change made as the series progressed was the position of Skynet in the war. In the first, the Terminator was a last-ditch effort, but as the movies progressed, their position seemed to shift to the other side. 4. Saw 5 and Beyond. On the face of it, Saw doesn't really seem to be a franchise that would cherish morals in any conceivable way, but at least when it started, there was an attempt by the filmmakers to give the movies some ethics. Each person in one of serial killer/liberator Jigsaw's traps is in some way a bad person who isn't appreciating life. Something near death is meant to force you to do. Basically, Jigsaw was a moral killer. But by about Saw 5, not only was the definition of bad becoming very subjective, but other completely innocent people were being brought along for the ride. Sure, by this point in the story, Jigsaw was long dead, but it's heavily implied that the traps were still his design and thus leaves us not relating to him in the small way the filmmakers wanted. A legacy was built and then swiftly cut down. Emphasis on the cut. 3. Star Wars Episode 5 – The Empire Strikes Back. Before the prequels came along, the major plot hole in Star Wars was much of what Obi-Wan said to Luke in his hut during the first act of A New Hope. The life-changing news about Luke's father is accompanied with the reveal that Darth Vader killed Anakin. Nothing initially seems off about this old hermit who only surly Uncle Owen doesn't trust, but we eventually learn that isn't the case. In a high-profile example of how George Lucas didn't plan out where he was taking Star Wars, in Episode 5 we learn the defining twist that Darth Vader is Luke Skywalker's father, which ruined much of the development in A New Hope. Of course, the twist is brilliant and shaped Star Wars into what it is today, and Lucas later sketchily retconned this with Obi-Wan's certain point of view line in Episode 6, but it's all a bit thrown together since he might as well have left it ambiguous.
So what I told you was true, from a certain point of view.
2. Jurassic Park – The Lost World. Jurassic Park's story is incredibly tight, crafting a logical cautionary tale that is as concerned with its unique characters as it is its effects. In it, we're introduced to Isla Nublar, the home of Jurassic Park where the scientists work to clone dinosaurs for the public and giant reptilian monsters roam free. Definitely not a recipe for disaster. But then in the sequel, it turns out there's another island with dinosaurs we've never seen in the park. The Lost World not only turned the motives behind Jurassic Park incredibly corporate, InGen was completely made up for the sequels, but it added another island to the mix. Now, Isla Sorna, the location for both The Lost World and Jurassic Park 3, is where the dinos were actually cloned and raised, despite going against what we see in the first film with raptors hatched in Jurassic Park itself. The real issue is that Sorna has so many dinosaurs we don't see on Nublar, even though we're told that the creatures only exist to go to the theme park. There's no continuity there. 1. Cars 2. Cars was always a blemish on Pixar's resume, not connecting with its adult audience in the same way the likes of Monsters Inc. or Finding Nemo did. Still, kids loved it, and after multiple runs around the DVD player, many doubtful parents began to see its charms. That this flawed, but still funny, emotional and smart film is the worst film Pixar has produced said a lot about their rigorous production process. Basically, even at their worst, Pixar movies were still good. But then Cars 2 happened. It ended Pixar's 10-film winning streak, and even though the film made a tasty profit, the critics tore it to shreds. The defining rule it broke was Pixar's own established brand of excellent animated stories. There's not much redeemable about this film. The most annoying of the company's supporting cast members became the star, and the plot is at once both predictable and, criminally for Pixar, boring. Sure, you can say that this isn't the same type of rule as the previous narrative examples, but the rule of Pixar's greatness was so strong over the past couple of decades, it was the saddest one to see destroyed. And that's our list. Which other broken rules in movie sequels belong on this list? Share your thoughts in the comments section below. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the What Culture YouTube channel for more lists like this, and don't forget to visit whatculture.com for daily news and articles. I've been Ash and this has been What Culture. Thanks for watching.